My dear brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ, Happy Christmas to you all. Joy to the world, the Lord is come is a song heard all over the world during Christmas time. That joy is spontaneous outcome of the peace announced by the angels at the birth of the Messiah. The peace that we experience in our life often is a worldly peace. This is different from the heavenly peace announced by the angels at Christmas. The Messiah himself at the Last Supper distinguishes the heavenly peace announced by the angels from any earthly peace that we might enjoy. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give it to you. Do not let your hearts be troubled or afraid. John 14:27. We experience some sort of peace when life meets our needs and expectations, or when the currents of relationships run smoothly, or when mutual fear of greater harm keeps two parties in tension-filled peace, like the peace experienced during the time of Cold Wars, whether in personal relationships or between nations. This type of earthly peace is temporary, needing repeated reinforcements and tend to get easily disturbed when our needs and expectations are not met, or when our relationships run into difficulties, or when there is a shift in the balance of power. Christmas, among other things, is God's gift of the way to heavenly peace, a gift which comes with an implicit invitation to humanity to walk that way. What exactly is this way to heavenly peace? It is a way that teaches us that we human beings cannot fabricate this peace, but can only receive it as a gift through faith. That is, it is a peace that results from allowing God's love and influence to power and pilot our thoughts, words, and deeds. In our daily settings of life, there are so many things beyond our control that cause anxiety, worry, resentment, and anguish. Sometimes our hearts feel like that of a child who wakes up in a dark room feeling forlorn and fearful. The child cries aloud in anguish. His mother rushes in and switches on the lights and picks him up and holds him close to her. All at once, he is comforted and is at peace. At Christmas, we celebrate God mothering us in this fashion. The birth of Christ announces that God has not only welcomed us who believe into his family, but fosters us like one who raises an infant to his cheek, to use the metaphor of Hosea in chapter 11:4. In his public ministry, Jesus worked many a miracle. All through the Advent season, we heard of the blind seeing, the lame walking, the deaf hearing, the lepers being cleansed, and the dead being raised as the signs announcing the coming of the Messiah. At Christmas, we celebrate the greatest miracle, that is, dimming the unapproachable light in which he lives, God becomes Emmanuel, God with us. In this child born at Bethlehem, now we can see God's face in the person of Jesus. We can hear the soothing whispers of heart of God speaking to us in words of Jesus. We can know what God wants for us in the life of Jesus. And in the Eucharist, we can even eat God as food to nourish our faith in him. Above all, Christmas assures us of God's presence nearer to us than any other presence, especially when our lives go through dark and cloudy phases. Life for us is never perfect. Not always our expectations and needs are met. nor everything that happens to us is under our control. St. Augustine prayed, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Our hearts mostly yield in agreement to that prayer. The words of the prayer also lift our spirits whenever we pray it. Nevertheless, there are things in our lives which we cannot change nor accept. In each circumstances, one thing we can do is to walk away or put away those things we cannot change. However, there are also things that we cannot change, accept, or remove from our lives. For example, a difficult partner in a marriage or a son in the family whose life and conduct is shameful. We have tried and failed to change this person. We cannot accept the person's conduct and we cannot walk away or put him or her away from our lives. The message of Christmas is that even in such circumstances, we can experience the peace announced by the angels in Bethlehem and the resultant joy by following the way God's incarnation opened for us, the way of rising above the distressing situation. We rise above by not allowing the distressing situation to dominate and control our thoughts, emotions, decisions, and actions. We rather allow God's presence and His ever-abiding love and mercy with us to make control of our lives. When God who is with us controls our lives long enough, then our hearts would become godlike. In the same way as an iron rod kept long enough in the fire glows like the fire itself. When we allow God's presence and the nearness to take hold of our hearts, we rise above our problems and our problems grow smaller and our perspective grows wider. We can imagine taking off in an aeroplane. As the plane climbs higher, the things below become smaller and our perspective gets larger and our horizon wider. Likewise, when we yield ourselves to God's control, He lifts us above our problems and draws us unto Himself and makes our hearts resemble His, more generous, more loving, and forgiving, more global and inclusive. Being touched and transformed by God, we can now bring grace upon a distressing situation. We may not be able to change it nor accept it, but with God near us, like the child in its mother's arms, we can find the strength and resilience to let the distressing situation be and live with it without allowing it to overwhelm us. Bringing grace to a distressing situation in this fashion makes God and heaven visible for us and others already here upon earth. The peace and joy that would ensue are enduring and cannot be taken away by anyone. This is the peace announced by the angels at Christmas, a peace that flows from self-emptying and self-forgetful love, from forgiveness, from mercy and compassion, the peace of God Himself. This path to God's peace is inaugurated at Bethlehem, tried and tested in Nazareth for 30 long years, and perfected on Calvary on the cross. On this Christmas night, let us too burst into the same song, Joy to the world, the Lord is come. More importantly, after the manner of the child we celebrate today, let us commit ourselves to walking God's path to peace. A joyful Christmas to every one of you.